has been tracking that story very closely. He joins us now live. Dasen, you are, I understand, standing right in front of that home where those IS flags were found.
That's right, Michelle. That home is behind me. It's in Reservoir Hills, a suburb in Durban. And I'll just move out of the shot while I continue to speak to you. As you can see, I mean, it's completely nondescript. And as I was saying to Koli earlier, you know, the expectation is not that you would see arrows pointing at this house where these alleged activities were taking place. But nevertheless, it is still a concern considering how quiet this neighborhood is and how some of the neighbors, the closest neighbors, didn't even have an inkling of what was allegedly going on here. But it's not just the ISIS flags, Michelle, that were found inside that house. According to the state, they say that they also found certain manuals in there. They found some of the articles that were published by ISIS, and in those articles it outlined how non-believers needed to be punished, and the way to do that was to take away their wealth. And that seems to be what the state is now hinging its case on. They're saying that these accused, 12 of them in total now, and 11 of them currently applying for bail, they say that they were trying to do just that, to follow these teachings, and that they were also using other resources, even some that they had found on the internet, to construct bombs, to scare people, and the idea ultimately to try to get money out of them. The demand, it seems so far from the cases that they are investigating, has been $100,000, and that, according to the state in its papers, was the demand to a businessman. This preceded the Verulam mosque attack, and in that case he hadn't paid that money. There were also kidnapping victims that kind of money was requested from, but it's not clear if that money was requested from the Woolworth stores, which were also at the center of these this case involving these incendiary devices.
And what do we know about whether the methods that you have described just now, whether these are in fact the methods that are used by ISIS cells around the world?
Well, Michelle, at this point, we can't make those comparisons just yet, because it seems like all they were doing, if they were doing that in fact, was using the teachings to inspire their way of extorting money, because that was one of the other motives that the state has put forward, and that's of extortion. And it seems like that they were inspired by that, but they were also consulting closely with others, because one of the accused number 2, in fact, was part of a WhatsApp group, and that WhatsApp group was called Soldiers of God. And that group, or at least that information, was in the state's affidavit, where they say they found that on his cell phone. The other thing is over the devices, Michelle. You know, I'm sure you've seen the pictures of those devices which have a cell phone attached to them, and there's a pipe, and that was used to detonate that device in these instances. And the police are saying that when they did arrest the so-called ringleader in this case, and they found one of those very uncommon cell phones in his possession, as well as some of the SIM cards that were used to detonate those devices. Those calls were made to those phones that were placed with that explosive, and that's how those devices were detonated. In addition to that, they were also using these cell phones and SIM cards to try to extort money, and SMSs were sent to these victims requesting that amount that I had mentioned to you earlier.
So where to from here in terms of the state's surely ongoing, the state versus, you know, the Hawks, all of the organizations that would ordinarily be involved in an investigation of this type? Where do they go from here, and are they keeping quite tight-lipped in terms of what they do know, where the investigation is leading them?
Definitely tight-lipped, Michelle. Even until this point, getting information out of the Hawks during this investigation has been quite a difficult process, and it was really the first time that we heard all of these details coming out in court. And even that in itself was a challenge, because, as you know, it took a long time before even the media was allowed to sit in on those proceedings, and we haven't been able to bring our viewers any visuals from inside court, not even live tweet, and those are the measures that have been taken. But the Hawks have also been watched very closely, ironically, by the general public, but also by analysts, because this investigation has not only local implications, but also international implications. In fact, we spoke to Jasmine Opperman on the channel earlier, security analyst, and let's just quickly take a listen to what she had to say.
Has been infiltration, that there has been people vulnerable to their ideology. I repeat, Michelle, again, is nothing new. I've been written numerous articles on this for the last 2-3 years, but it is a small section. It is a minority section. Our community, and a broader concept, is simply not open to these types of Thathiah ideology by the Islamic State. But it does not take a lot of people to create mayhem. That we must also understand. And hence, whatever the case now may be, and the fact that this has been made public, there's immense responsibility on the police and the Hawks to conclude this case with hardcore evidence for the public to be informed on a factual basis. Because again, the public is left confused. Yeah. What are we sitting with now? Are we sitting with an active cell of 12 people in an organized level in South Africa willing to execute attacks? Then we have a serious problem and we have reason to be concerned.
Yeah, some very worrying words there from our security expert. Thanks very much for that. Dasen Thathiah joining us live there from Durban. Police investigating allegations of terror-related activities in Durban. That's, of course, in relation to those explosive devices that were found across the city just a few weeks ago. Now, let's take a look now at what exactly ISIS is. We know the Islamist terrorist group started out as a splinter of Al-Qaeda. Now, the main objective for ISIS is to create an Islamic State called a caliphate across Iraq, Syria and beyond. Its members are known for carrying out public executions, crucifixions and acts of terror. Islamic State uses modern tools like social media to promote reactionary politics and religious fundamentalism. Now, the group's funding comes from an oil production and smuggling ring, and from taxes, ransoms from kidnappings, the sale of stolen artifacts, extortion, and controlling crops, among a range of other methods. Back in July 2016, the Tulsi twins were arrested in police raids on the West Rand for allegedly having links to ISIS. That case is also ongoing.